Hey everyone. So, sorry the last video kind of cut off. I didn't realize that this new camera that my husband got while I was away kind of has like a max memory usage or whatever, so I didn't realize I was rambling for like 29 minutes about what happened, and it was like not even half of the experience, so I realized I'm probably gonna have to make part two. So this is part two of my mental hospital experience, and I think where I left off on my last video was I was about to tell you about how the therapist was trying to push lithium kind of on me. I've taken toxicology classes, I've studied psychology, pharmacology, I read a lot of books about how the brain works. I've self-taught myself a lot of things over the years about my illness, and I know about lithium, and I know that it's been around for 40 years, and I know that it can cause a lot of side effects, like tremors in your hands, you know, like shakes, and it can also cause thyroid problems where you have difficulties eating, and sometimes it's the opposite where you eat like way overeat and you end up like gaining a bunch of weight. So I was like, as soon as he brought that up, I was like, yeah, not happening, pretty much, on to the next one. So he told me about another drug that I'm pretty sure he called Epipram. Don't hold me to that. Epival, my husband's saying. So, Epival, and so he told me about that. The most generic name for it is valproic acid. Oh, he's throwing the little card that my nurse gave me here. So yeah, Epival. EPIVAL is my new medication. I'm taking 250 milligrams twice a day, so 500 milligrams a day, plus my my usual dose of clonazepam to sleep properly. And he suggested that to me, but he also told me a bit about it. You know, it's one of those drugs that's also been around for a long time, but it doesn't have as many side effects as the lithium does, and most of the side effects are for some reason related to a lot of Asians for some reason. I don't know why, but I was like, well, I guess I can give that a try, because that was one of the drugs that I've never really heard of, or hasn't really popped up in my research that I've self-done over the years. So I was like, okay, that's something that I haven't heard of anything about, and, you know, let's try that one, because that's something new, and I just wanted to, like, do a whole new approach. Sorry, my battery died on me there. So I was telling you how I wanted to do like a whole new approach on the new drug. So he basically told me that I would have to submit to like regular blood tests, because there's a chance of drug toxicity with this specific drug. So if your liver isn't metabolizing the drug correctly, then you can actually your blood can become toxic, like the levels of the drug can become toxic in your blood. So if you experience nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, slurred speech, blurred vision, weakness, or trembling, contact your doctor right away, because these might be signs of drug toxicity. It also tells you that if you miss a dose by accident, to not take a double dose ever, to just you know, skip that dose, wait until your next one, and just take your regular dose. So like I said, regular blood tests are needed to check for blood changes and ensure that the most effective dose is being taken. Like most mood stabilizers or tranquilizers or antidepressants, they always tell you to use caution when you're driving or operating machinery or whatever, because most of them make you feel dopey as hell at first. Some people, that continues like the entire time that they're taking it, and other people develop tolerances very quickly and will have to like increase their dose. Another reason why I agreed to take this medication is because I think the max dosage is a lot higher than most. So I think it was like 2,500 milligrams you can go up to, or 2,000 milligrams. So that's pretty good. Especially when I'm just starting out at 250 twice a day. So I figured I might have a potential to be on this medication for a long period of time and not need to increase my dose, hopefully. That's what I found happened a lot with the Seroquel. It was working very well at first and then slowly tapering off, and I would have to keep increasing the dose, and it seemed like the more I increased the dose, the faster I was becoming tolerant to it, and it just got to the point where I was like paying $75 for a medication that I felt like was only helping me sleep. So I was like, I'm done spending $75 on a fucking sleeping pill. And that's basically what ended me up in the mental health ward. So we started on the Epival, and that night, and I remember the first pill that I took, I felt slightly nauseous. Nothing that was like too concerning to me, especially since I like haven't been eating very well the last year, and I'm pretty skinny, and I just I figured that, you know, that was just a normal side effect for someone my size. So I didn't really mention anything to the nurse or the doctor about it, and just kind of waited to see how the next dose would feel. So when I took the next pill the next morning, after breakfast, I felt a lot better. I didn't feel nauseous at all. So I was like, okay, it was probably just a fluke, because I haven't been on any medications in a while, and except for the clonazepam to sleep. So I just felt like it was a normal reaction. So after we had this discussion about the medication and everything, I basically didn't see much of the doctor. I got checked in on, let me just check my calendar here to make sure that I'm being specific. So I got checked in on Thursday afternoon. So my first official day was Friday. That's when I had the episode, the mania episode. I freaked out over my clothes. I basically told the doctor to go fuck himself. During my visit with my mother-in-law, my husband, and my daughter, I got pulled out and we discussed medication. I finally saw his game for what it was and was like, okay, I'm gonna taper down my aggressiveness, my defensiveness a little bit, and just tell him kind of what he wants to hear so that he will give me a mood stabilizer. Because honestly, if you've done enough research, you know that bipolar is treated by mood stabilizers anyway. So even if he felt like I had a mild mood disorder, he was still giving me what I wanted, and he was basically working in my game anyway. So I got what I wanted. I got my mood stabilizer to try, and it ended up working, which I was so thankful for. The next day was Saturday. So weekends in the mental health ward are basically like being dropped in a hole and someone occasionally walks by to check to see if you're still alive, and that's about it. I heard so many rules while I was there that never got confirmed. I was never handed any sort of official rules and regulations or, you know, any sort of paperwork like that like outlined specific things that you were not allowed to do, or, you know, specific guidelines that you had to withstand. So it just felt like the entire time that like the nurses and the staff were just kind of like making up rules as they went along that, you know, would help them through certain situations. And I don't know if there was any official rules because I never saw any. So I'll just tell you some of the stupid things that I noticed. Like there was one point on Saturday where I actually met a guy who had the same type of bipolar as me, bipolar I. I literally was talking to this guy for maybe, I don't know, 20 minutes to half an hour, and we were already finishing each other's sentences and thoughts. So to me, that was just like validation that I have bipolar I, and everything that he was saying about excelling in school and, you know, just certain things in his life that he was always good at and things that he struggled with were just like the exact same as my problems. So it was just very validating to me. And I ended up, I only had like these two really flat ass pillows on my bed. So I asked the nurse if it was possible if I could get another pillow, and he overheard like the conversation. He was like, "Oh, I got like 6 in my room. You can take one from me." And I was like, "Oh, thanks. That would be really nice." So I guess one of the nurses overheard it, and he said, "You know, just make sure you bring me the pillow first. You know, there's health regulations or whatever. We just got to make sure we wash it before we give it to another patient." Completely understandable. I got that. I literally took like 2 steps in from like the hallway barrier to his room, and one of the nurses was like, "You're not allowed in other patients' rooms." And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. No one never said that to me when I got here." You'd think that would be, you know, something that you would mention as you're coming in, you know, like you're allowed in your own room, but don't go into the other patients' rooms kind of thing. I don't know if that was an official rule or not. It could have been, because the rooms that we were in didn't have any cameras. All of the hallways, the only hallway that we walked in had tons of cameras, but there was no cameras like actually in our rooms or in the bathroom or anything like attached to our rooms. So I can kind of understand that maybe being a rule, but I often saw like other people hanging out in other people's rooms that I knew that wasn't their room. So I don't know, I just kind of pushed it out of my head until this one afternoon I walked into my room, and my roommate was sitting on her bed with another patient, a young girl. And I asked my roommate, I was like, "Is there like an official rule about patients being in other patients' rooms?" Because my roommate has been at that facility multiple times. So I kind of relied on her for information a bit, because she's been there before and she knew things about the place that most people didn't. So I asked her, and she's like, "Yeah, I've never heard that rule since I've been here." And I was like, "Well," and then I told her about the incident with the pillow and everything, and she was like, "Yeah, that's not right." So basically, it like the whole time you feel like you're walking on glass or eggshells, because you don't have official rules. You don't know what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. But they kind of just tell you whatever you want to hear, and sometimes they like they make you feel like
She's on some good meds now.
you're crazy almost. Like, my roommate told me about this one incident where my roommate has PTSD, and it's not from like war related things. It's from, I'm gonna say, guess, like childhood abuse or some sort form of abuse. And she sometimes is afraid to like lay in bed or get into bed because I guess she associates, you know, those nightmares or those feelings with lying in bed. So she was trying to explain this to her nurse one night, and she told me that her nurse was like giving her this look like, you know, like she was crazy. And she told her nurse, you know, like, you can look at me like that all you want, but it's still not going to make me feel any more comfortable about getting into my bed. So it was just like the lack of empathy for patients there made me sick to my stomach. And there was another incident where the guy that had bipolar I like me, he was actually talking to his nurse one night about his medication. And one of the other patients in the ward came up and kind of made a comment to his nurse, "Oh, he's on the same thing as me." And the nurse said to him, "Oh yeah, he is." And I'll call him George. That's not his real name, but I don't want to, you know, give away privacy crap. So George was pretty upset about this, that, you know, a nurse had like given another patient his private medical information and did it like right in front of him. So he reported the nurse to the head nurse that was on at the time. I didn't witness the actual event of him complaining to the head nurse, but I was in the daycare room, as I like to call it, with George while we were waiting for our pills one night. It was just me and him, and the head nurse came in to speak with him about the complaint that he had made, and he said that he had spoken to the nurse, and the nurse had basically said that George had lied about the whole scenario, that he never disclosed any information to the other patient, and the head nurse basically told him that he believed the nurse over him, and I was just flabbergasted. I was like, I'm really starting to see how shit works around here. So basically, you just like, you roll with the punches, and if you don't, then you end up in the next ward. And I really didn't want to end up over there because you lose like all visitation privileges, and that was the only thing literally keeping me going, was seeing my husband and my daughter. And when I first got checked in, the intake worker or crisis worker or whatever the hell he was, he assured me that it would be fine for my 2-year-old daughter to come and visit. And he did mention that usually they don't allow visitors under the age of 15 to come into the ward, but they do have a locked interview room where she could come and visit me, and he thought that would be no problem at all. So the first day, my husband brought my daughter. Second day, my husband brings my daughter, and the nurses acted like it was such a big deal, like, you can't bring her in here, blah, 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 like, next time, like, don't bring her back. And my husband basically had to, like, beg them to let my daughter come see me that day. So after finding out that that was probably the last time I was going to see her until I got out, I had a really rough time saying goodbye. And apparently so did my daughter. She was like screaming and freaking out after the doors closed. So in a way, I guess it was kind of a good thing, because I didn't want to have to keep putting my daughter through that. But I just wanted to see her. Like, the second time she came to see me, she slept on me for 2 hours, and it was just nice to hold her, you know, and have that moment of home, and to know that that was being taken away from me too was really hard to deal with. So on the weekends there, like I said, you're basically just like dropped in a hole, and everybody just comes and checks on you whenever the hell they feel like it. I heard that there was this rule that nurses are supposed to make rounds every single hour to check on their assigned patients. I think there was only one nurse that I had in the 5 days I was there that actually followed that rule and checked on me every hour.
Experience in the hospital.
Every other nurse would only come in right on my whiteboard in the morning, you know, which would like tell you your doctor's name, your nurse's name for the day, and then they would give you like a recommended activity or something. And one day I had this nurse, Sheila, who decided to write on my board shower. Like, I almost lost my shit that day. Like, I'm 25 years old. I'm not a fucking baby. I don't need you to tell me when to take a shower. I was like, what's next? Are they going to tell me when to wipe my fucking ass? Like, I was fed up. So I got erased off my board like immediately, and I deliberately didn't take a shower that day just to fucking piss her off, because I was like, you're not fucking controlling certain aspects of my life. Like, yeah, I'm locked in a mental health ward, but I get to choose when I pee, and I get to choose when I fucking shower, and you're not taking those away from me. So, weekends, there literally is nothing to do. They give you more visiting hours. I think it's 2 to 8 p.m. on the weekends. So you get a solid 6 hours. If you have family members that can come and see you, you can spend the whole 6 hours with them if you want in your room or in the ward. We, the patients there, we called it 3 North C because it's better than saying, hey, we're locked in the loony bin or the mental health ward or inpatient or whatever the hell you want to call it. So yeah, we used to joke with new patients, hey, welcome to 3 North C. Whenever, you know, messed up shit would happen. And so let me tell you about like the non-scheduled activities. So basically, you wake up at 7:30 in the morning, go to breakfast at 8 o'clock. It's up to your nurse to have your pills into you by 9. And then lunch isn't until 11:30, I'm going to say. And then dinner is at 4:30. You get your pills for bed between 9 and 10 o'clock, and they expect you to be in your room and completely quiet by 11. And that's the structure for the weekend. There's no group therapy. There's no doctor that's on site. There's only one that's on call. So the only people that are there are the patients and the nurses that basically sit in their nurse's station on their cell phones half the day. I don't know how many patients I told, like, man, I'd love to have their fucking job where I could just sit on my ass half the day texting to my friends, getting paid better salary than most to not do my job, you know? I just, like, I get so frustrated watching that kind of thing happen because I don't understand why people like that even choose to be in that type of career. Like, why did you choose to work in a mental health ward if you're an unempathetic, ignorant fucking asshole? Sorry if I'm being a little too honest, but I'm just like, I'm so frustrated about the whole experience. I couldn't believe that they just left you on the weekends to do basically nothing. And the things that you did have to do were, there was this room that you could go into where there was a TV, but there was only like VHS tapes that were like friggin' old as hell, so you didn't want to watch anything there. And for some reason the TV room attracts like the real unstable people, so I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna avoid that room at all costs. I think the only time that I went in there was to check out the bookshelf that they had in the corner that they consider the library, which is literally like a shelf like maybe this long, and it's not even completely filled with books. There's maybe 15 of them, and they're all over 10 years old, and they're like the most horrible romance novels you've ever read in your entire life. Like, if you made it through from cover to cover, you'd probably shoot yourself. So I was like, when I finally got my privileges, I was like begging my husband. I'm like, please bring me my Bible, please bring me a book to read, or any sort of reading material. I am like losing brain cells by the minute being in this place. And thank God for George, because he was like the only person that I could have like intellectual conversation with, and it just felt it felt like you were getting more therapy from talking to other patients than anything that was happening with the nurses or your therapist or the social worker or the general practitioners or anybody that was seeing you. I felt like I was getting more out of talking to the patients. And it was like the weirdest feeling the first day, like sitting down the first morning by yourself. And I don't know, I guess I expected it to kind of be like high school where everyone doesn't know you, so they just avoid you. And in a mental health ward, it's like the complete opposite. Everybody is so supportive of the new people, and I look pretty young, I guess, so all of the teenagers from like 17 to 20 kind of like flocked to where I was sitting, and I made friends like instantly. It was a weird feeling because it was like the opposite of what happens in the real world, you know? Usually when you have a freak out on the first day and everyone sees your true colors, they avoid you. But everyone like flocked to me because they knew I was having a rough time, and everyone wanted to pick me up, and I made some lifelong friends there that I will never ever forget. And if you guys are watching, I hope you're all doing well, and I'm sending my love and support always. So yeah, I felt like a lot of the time that the patients were helping each other more. I actually got my husband to bring me this book. I think it's called On the Bright Side, and it's basically just like a little inspirational book that basically tells you, you know, like not to let your thoughts run you, for you to be the one to set out the orders. And I'm actually going to try and get another copy of it because I gave it away to a lady who was extremely depressed, and I felt like it would really help her. And the day after I gave it to her, I noticed that she stopped walking up and down the halls just staring at her feet. She was actually looking up, and I've noticed her like kind of smiling once or twice. And the day that I left, I actually ran into her on my way out the door, and she asked me one more time, "Are you sure you don't want that book back?" And I was like, no, I don't want the book back. I want you to read it every day, and I want you to think of me, and I want you to be happy. That's what you can do for me. When I left, I felt so weird, and it made me start thinking about how people get institutionalized. And I completely understand how it happens now, because I mean, as much as that place sucks and you're locked in and you have absolutely no control over certain things, you feel secure there almost. Some people feel secure there. Like, you have 3 meals a day that are served to you at the exact same time. You have a warm bed to sleep in at night. And you have people that are caring for you, you know, looking out for you. So for a lot of people with like schizophrenia or paranoid delusions or PTSD or extreme mental illnesses like that, it's just easier for them to live in a mental health ward because people don't judge them there like they would be in the outside world.
Nice.
So when my husband took me home finally, it was like the weirdest feeling to be out of there. And I remember I got privileges to start going out for like these half-an-hour breaks where you could either have a, you know, if you're a smoker, you can have your Nick fix, or if you're not, you can go to the cafe or grab a coffee or whatever. But you have a half an hour and then you got to be back in the ward, and if you're not, you're in deep shit. So I got those privileges probably like the afternoon before I left, so I only got to use that privilege maybe once or twice. And I remember when I first got it, I was like so excited, like, yeah, even if I get to like walk out those doors for a half an hour, I get like a little taste of freedom, you know? And I remember I was walking down the hall, and we'll call him David. David was walking towards me, and he was like, "What are you so happy about?" And I'm like, "Oh, I just got my half an hour privileges to go, and I can grab a coffee and maybe, you know, get a breath of fresh air." And he was like, "Oh, that's awesome." And we had like this little moment, you know, where we had a quick little hug, and I remember like instantly having like this gut feeling in my stomach, like, oh my god, are we gonna get in trouble because we just had like a little, I don't know, a little happy moment, a little embrace? Am I gonna get in trouble because I just touched another patient? So like those are the kinds of things that like you just feel uncomfortable with while you're there. And because of the time that I came in on Thursday, my information